To better understand these new measures and the implications, I want to turn to Peter Vincent. He's the Director Counselor for International Policy at Borderpol, a nonprofit security consultant firm. Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
I want to read you something that Sweden's Prime Minister said just a few months ago. He said, "The Europe he loved did not put up barriers to those fleeing war." He backed up his words, according to the Guardian. And in 2015, Sweden took in 163 asylum seekers. Now the new border restrictions and the border checks for Sweden. Are you surprised, and why now? What changed in 4 months?
I'm troubled, but I'm not entirely surprised. We have seen a transition, a wave of border security measures following through Europe, starting about a year ago, when these mass numbers of individuals fleeing war and terror or looking for better economic or educational opportunities outside of places like Syria and Afghanistan and Iraq started to show up in southern and eastern Europe. Pretty quickly, the countries that were the first recipients of those individuals, Hungary, Greece, for example, and Italy, started to stray from the Schengen free border, free passport travel requirements under the Schengen Border Code and impose border security or passport checks. Then we saw other countries in Central Europe, Germany, France, the Netherlands, Slovenia, and Slovakia start to impose similar. Now we're at the stage when the last dominoes are starting to fall in this phase, and you see the situation in Sweden and in Denmark now in responding to Sweden. Now, I don't want to be too hard on the Swedes, of course. They have done more than any other European country in terms of accepting refugees on a per capita basis. They've accepted about 200,000 just this year alone, and they look to accept more. But they're facing incredible challenges in terms of being able to properly feed and house and provide the social services and educational opportunities that these refugees so desperately need.
So if I'm a Syrian refugee desperately trying to get to Sweden, I may not get there.
That is very true. You may not get there. In fact, because of the straying by a number of countries from the Schengen passportless travel system, it's going to be awfully difficult from this point on to get anywhere from, say, Iraq or Syria or Afghanistan into Central, especially Northern Europe, into the Nordic countries.
Are you concerned at all about how much of a blow this could be for this whole passport-free Schengen zone, if you will? I mean, what does it mean for people in the region? And what about commuters between Denmark and Norway? What a headache for them. Not Norway, my apologies, Sweden. What a headache for them.
Right. This particular travel zone that was established about 15 years ago between Copenhagen in Denmark and the third largest city, Malmö, in Sweden, is a major thoroughfare that people use, about 20,000 to 30,000 people each and every day, in order to conduct business, to study, to go to their places of work. So that's become a huge problem, and it's affected trade. In addition, it's disheartening to see the historically extraordinarily welcoming Scandinavians suffering from a sort of charity fatigue and not able to continue to open their borders and to serve as a sort of safe haven, a refuge of sorts for individuals that are fleeing terror and war in their own countries.
What about the burden and the strain this refugee crisis has put on European nations? Can one really blame them for implementing these kinds of measures?
Well, Sweden in particular, I have no doubt, suffered from a great deal of angst in dealing with this particular problem. I have no doubt that there was a great deal of soul-searching that went on, so much so that when they finally announced that they had to take these measures, the Deputy Prime Minister of Sweden broke down in tears. This is a country, again, that per capita has provided refuge to more individuals than any other country in Europe. But they were faced with the situation of being simply overwhelmed with the sheer number of individuals and felt the pressure, internal politics, in order to be able to provide for them in a way that allowed these folks to at least stay there temporarily with dignity.
What about Finland and Norway? Do you see this going further up north even?
Well, that is a continuance of the dominoes falling. Now, Finland and Norway have had stricter standards than, say, Sweden and Denmark have had, but that is perhaps the next step. And it's something that is very seriously being considered by individuals in those countries. This has really now become a real crisis for the Schengen community. It was very much pushed to the edges before, but despite Chancellor Merkel's desperate efforts to hold it together, because there is real value in this 26-nation Schengen passport-free travel zone, this sort of thing really threatens to tear it to shreds.
We'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Peter Vincent. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.